We're predicting every single Big Ten over-under prediction for the 2024 season and why the Minnesota disrespect is not tolerable.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. And today we've got a good one, a juicy one. I'm going to tick some people off today from other fan bases, but that is a-okay because they have ticked us off, folks. They have disrespected the Gophers one too many times, giving them the lowest over-under total in the entire Big Ten, ranking them as one of the bottom two teams in the entire conference, and it's downright disrespectful. I'm not going to tolerate it, and you're going to make me look smart when it comes to making this money and making y'all look foolish with these predictions, but also it's going to feel good just to prove the haters wrong. So we're going to go game or team by team conference predictions when it comes to the way too early Big Ten win total over unders that were released by friends of the show in FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook, who brings you this show today. So definitely we're going to go through those, and I am going to take a lot of fan bases off and maybe surprisingly catch a few rivals by surprise. On top of that, we're going to talk about why Minnesota is underrated, and on top of that is returning a ton of production, which will be a reason why they get above that 4.5 wins. And then finally, we're going to talk about the three main reasons of why Minnesota will win 5 games or more in the 2024 season, coming up on today's show. So if you're enjoying it, if you're ready to kick back, relax, if you think I'm downright crazy on some of these over-unders, let me know in the comments. Be sure to hit subscribe so you can always chime in. I'll be ranking all the teams in the conference later this offseason. We'll rank every single position in the Big Ten like we did last year. So if you like rankings, if you like being able to debate it back and forth, get your thoughts on the screen itself with the comments, then be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube, follow wherever you get the podcast. But let's jump in with these way too early Big Ten win total over unders that were released by FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm going team by team from greatest odds to worst odds, and we're going to talk about what my prediction is for each one of these teams. So we kick it off with Ohio State coming in at 10.5 wins. I'm going to take the over on this one. I do not think that Ohio State is going to lose more than one game when I'm looking at their schedule. Now, could they? Absolutely. But if they do, if they lose 2 to 3 games, Ryan Day will be on a one-way ticket to somewhere else. So I would not stress too much on this one. Tons of quarterback talent. You've got 2 5-star quarterbacks coming in on top of a top-notch transfer in Will Howard. You brought in a top-notch running back to pair with your returning top-notch running back, 2 of the best running backs in the entire country on Ohio State. And then you've got multiple young receivers ready to thrive this year for Ohio State, and Emeka Egbuka is back with the Buckeyes. So I think that they're easily going over there. The next team, Oregon, same line, 10.5. I'm going to take the wins. I'm going to take the over on that one. I think Oregon's going to be the second best or first best team in the entire conference. Dylan Gabriel's real deal. Tez Johnson is back, and they're going to find a way to get it done. That defense was nasty with Dan Lanning, and I think they're only going to get better. So I think overall, both of those top two teams get the over. Now, the next line is Michigan coming in at 9.5. So I'm going to go ahead and take the under on this one. I think Michigan only gets 9 wins on the season. Now, as of now, the reason I would take the under is because we still don't know who the quarterback is going to be for Michigan. They also have Sherrone Moore as a new head coach. Now, yes, I get it. He coached multiple games for them last year, but last year's team was stacked. It was one of the best teams that I have witnessed personally, and I was saying all year I thought they were the best team in the country. Even prior to the Gophers playing Michigan, I think it was like by week 3, I was like, this is the best team in the country. This is one of the better teams I've seen. This defense is unreal. The defensive line was next level, and they proved it. They won a national championship. They went undefeated. They had a quarterback who could get it done. They had a running backs who could get it done. And so I think overall that Michigan team was nasty, but they're losing a whole lot, and they might have to continue to rebuild that identity. Now, yes, Donovan Edwards is back. Yes, they've got some nice running backs, Cole Cabana, Benjamin Hall, Jordan Marshall coming in. But overall, I think they're going to have to find the answer at quarterback and supplement a lot of defensive departures. I don't know if that's going to be enough to do in year one with new staff. So overall, I think they're going to come in under, probably still get 9 wins on the year. Penn State, I'm going to take the over on 9.5. Now, I think Penn State might only lose to Ohio State on their conference schedule. They avoid Michigan, they avoid Oregon, and I think that they can beat the California schools. I think that they can beat Washington, especially in a transition type year. So overall, I think Penn State has a ton of production coming back. They've got their quarterback back. They've got Abdul Carter, who's a next level, probably first round pick in the NFL draft defensively next year. They've got 2 stud running backs. They've got Keandre Lambert-Smith back, who was their number 1 receiver last year. Plus, they've got Julian Fleming transferring in from Ohio State. So they've got a ton of talent, and I think they're going to put it all together in 2024. Give me the over on 9.5 for Penn State. Now, this is where it starts to get scrappy and interesting. USC 7.5. Now, everything in me wants to choose the under. Everything in my soul wants to say this USC team is going to be overrated, and they still could be, but I'm going to take the over on this one. I think they get right at that 8 wins. Now, I think they get 7 or 8 wins on this season, and it's all dependent on how big of a strides the defense can take, but also what the quarterback play is like. Now, if they get Miller Moss, who showed up in that bowl game versus Louisville and absolutely balled out, then yeah, they'll get above. But if they don't, if they get a Miller Moss who's second guessing or struggling, and they got to put in Maeva and he's still not clicking all the way either, then I think I could see the under here. But this is probably one of the hardest lines, in my opinion, is USC at 7.5. I'm going to take the over. Washington, same line, 7.5. I'm taking the under. Completely new staff, basically a new roster. You have tons of NFL departures. You have multiple transfers. You have I think they lose 4 or maybe all 5 of their offensive linemen from last year when it comes to the starters. On top of that, you have a brand new quarterback in Will Rogers coming in, but he's coming in to play with a different quarterback coach and coordinator and head coach than he initially committed with. And I just think overall the wide receiver room's pretty sparse now. I think Washington is going to struggle, on top of defenses in the Big Ten are going to give a lot for some of these new teams. Now, Oregon might be able to hang, but I think Washington, USC, and UCLA are all going to experience a little bit more struggles against these Big Ten defenses. So give me the under on 7.5 for Washington next season. Now, the next one, 7.5 is the line still, and that's Nebraska. And guess what? Nebraska, the team that hasn't won enough games to get into a bowl game for 6 or 7 straight years, they're put at 7.5 for their line. So basically, to take an over, they have to get 8. And I'm going to take the over. And there's one main reason why. Now, I'm not one to hype up Nebraska. Like, if you've listened to this show at all, you know that I have always been like, Nebraska's on the rise. They're figuring some things out, but they're not as good as what people make them out to be in this decade. And so, you know what? I still think there has been struggles there, but I think there's one main reason, and no, that reason isn't Dylan Raiola. He might be talented. He might be a true freshman baller, but I think the number one reason why Nebraska is going to have a big season is Tony White in year 2 with that defense. And I think that defense gave problems. They gave chaos to every team they played last year, basically. And I think it will only be better next season. So I think that Tony White and that defense is going to be everything on why Nebraska can get over the 7.5. Then Iowa, I've also got them over on 7.5. Death, taxes, and Iowa winning ugly. Those are the 3 things that you can absolutely count on. Ohio State is a tough matchup for them, but I think they have a chance to beat any other team on their schedule outside of Ohio State, depending on if their quarterback can stay healthy, because Cade McNamara is a much more capable quarterback than Deacon Hill. So I think overall, if their quarterback stays healthy, if Luke Lachey stays healthy, and the defense keeps on balling like it does, I think I was going to find a way over that 7.5. Now, here's where it gets a little interesting. Maryland and Wisconsin are both at 6.5, and I am going to give Maryland an under. Look, I get Maryland's held its own. I get that the past 2 years it's been pretty fun for them, but I think the NFL departures, Tagovailoa gone, portal departures, plus they're playing Oregon and Penn State, and I think the time to develop chemistry and whatnot with a new younger quarterback and all that, I think that they're going to struggle, and I am going to take the under on 6.5. Whereas Wisconsin, I'm going to take the over. Now, this is an over I would possibly smash if it wasn't for a tough non-conference, but South Dakota is no joke and not a team to sleep on. And then Alabama, of course, is Bama. They got Kalen DeBoer going out there, so that's going to be a tough game. I think that they're going to get 7 wins or more at least. So I think that you're going to see a loss to Bama, to Oregon, to Penn State, but that means you only can drop 2 more games as Wisconsin. I think that they can get there, but I think this might be one of the riskiest plays is Wisconsin and USC. Now, the final ones we're going to fly through here. Rutgers at 5.5. I'm taking the under. I think that, yes, they had a great year last year, but I've seen more. I need to see more consistency before I can fully buy in. Plain and simple. Northwestern, similar. I'm going to go under because more of their schedule, but also because it's a deeper, they're not in the West anymore. And I think if Minnesota is going to get the backlash of not being in the West, and Northwestern absolutely has to feel that backlash. So I'm taking the under. Illinois, I'm taking the under at 5.5. I'm taking the under with 5 wins. They didn't get to 5, or they didn't get above 5 wins this past season. I don't think they're going to get it above it again. Michigan State, 5.5. I'm going to take the over. I think they're going to get to a bowl game, but I think it's going to be just barely. I think they're going to get to 6 as they continue to build things up, but Joe Rossi is going to be good for them. The new head coach is going to be good for them. Aiden Childs is a very talented quarterback. I think they're going to find a way to get 6 wins. UCLA. Now, this might be a hot take. I'm going to take the under. Their line is 5.5. I would smash this under. I would never look back. I think UCLA is going to be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten Conference this upcoming season, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close. New head coach, hasn't really been a head coach, hasn't really been a play caller. On top of that, Ethan Garbers, he's fine, but I think he's getting overamped. They don't have a ton of returning production. I think UCLA is going to struggle, and it's going to be bad, and life in the Big Ten is not going to be kind to them. Indiana, 5.5 line. I'm taking the over. I like the coach. I like the new quarterback. I think they're going to start to get things clicking and gelling, and that coach finds a way to get things going. I think he can get to a bowl in his first year. And so I'm going to give them 6 wins. Purdue, I would take the under at 4.5 because I just don't know what's going on with that team and that offense. I think 4 is probably another bad year for them, but it might happen. And then Minnesota is at 4.5. Downright disrespectful. We've talked about it once. We've talked about it again. And we're going to talk about it coming up on the next segment, but I would absolutely smash the over, run it, take it to the bank, and then some. I'm going to tell you exactly why that is coming up next. First, let's talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is that group that just gave us all those over and unders and the winning lines to bet on, and you can do that and more over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You also can turn your head towards the NBA season. The playoffs will be here before we know it. It's the best time for NBA basketball is right now, and you can take advantage of it if you are a new customer. You can, any $5 winning bet for your first bet, you will get $150 in bonus bets. So go out there and pick the easy one, smash it in there, get $150 in bonus bets, and then see profit. And on top of that, it's $150 if your bet wins, but you can bet on all the things from your favorite NBA players, your favorite NBA teams, quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, and so much more. And then when you're done there, once you've gotten all your winnings from this NBA season, you can turn it towards the college football season and absolutely smash the Gophers over. Thank me later, and we can both celebrate with those winnings. But visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to take advantage today and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA and of Locked On. All right, Gophers fans, so we're talking about why I would smash the over on 4.5 for the Minnesota Gophers. Now, we've already talked about this on the show before, but I have to reiterate it with a little bit more information. Minnesota is being underrated, and you know what? Fans should take it in. You take it as disgust or whatever, but they're going to be just fine. They're going to do good this season. Now, what is good? Is it 9-10 wins? Probably not, but I do think that the Gophers are going to be competitive. I do think that they're going to be right in the middle of the pack of the Big Ten, and I think that they can find ways to continue to build on their youth and make themselves more capable in the future. Now, when you're looking at this Minnesota team, Minnesota is returning a ton of production. My guy, Ryan Burns, friend of the show over at 2474 Minnesota he does Gopher Illustrated, he does Parent and Spare Pod, all that stuff. Well, Ryan shared something from an ESPN writer that Minnesota is actually returning the 19th most returning production in the FBS. That's of 134 schools that have FBS football teams in the Division I level. Minnesota has the 19th best returning production in the country. Last year, coming into 2023, they were at 87th. They had tons of departures. Everybody talked about how they were losing John Michael Schmitz, and they were losing Tanner Morgan, and they were losing Mo Ibrahim, and they were losing Howden, Terrell Smith, and the list goes on and on. Well, yes, we're still losing some departures, but 19th in the entire country in returning production says a lot, especially because a lot of that returning production is a lot of young players that got on the field and got minutes due to injuries and things last season. So even with that lack of returning production last season in 2023, Minnesota still won 5 games. They won 5 games with a schedule that was comparable and very difficult, like next year's will be. And they proved that they can win 5 games, and they should have had a minimum of 7 wins last year, but they absolutely dropped the ball and fumbled the bag late in the final 2 minutes, not only against Northwestern, but also against Illinois. Those both should have been wins. Yes, I am still bitter about it. Yes, I will continue to be bitter about it, but those last final minute collapses proved that this was a team that is very capable of winning 7 games last year and absolutely should have had 7 regular season wins and a bowl win last year. So now you're telling me that I just have to get that same number to get the over on this one, that same amount of struggles and wins that they got last year is all you need to get the over this year. And now Fleck, with more returning production, all world talented running back, a solid transfer quarterback coming from the FCS with lots of experience, and you have that returning production to pair with it. I said it a couple of weeks ago, but I would take that 4.5 line and take the over straight to the bank, sprint there, put the mortgage down, and do whatever you got to do, because that is an easy money bet. I would take it yesterday, today, twice on Saturday, and then some. Now, PJ Fleck has not been under 4.5 in his entire career with Minnesota. Plain and simple. In full seasons of football, which is 6 full seasons, PJ Fleck has not been under 4.5 wins. So overall, I think that the history tells you to take the over. The returning production tells you to take the over. The star running back tells you to take the over. The actual insights from last season, not just the looking at the record and seeing them have 5 wins, but looking at the insights and how it happened, tells you to take the over. Now, there are 2 games on Minnesota's schedule that you can look at and be like, yep, they're going to be massive underdogs. They're going to be probably, the odds will be that they'll get ripped apart, and that will be against Penn State and Michigan. But aside from those 2 games, I think every single game on the schedule is going to be closer to 50-50 than it is a blowout on the away from Minnesota. So I think overall, you'll see a lot of 50-50 games. You'll see a lot of 60-40 splits. And even in a 60-40 split, that is a winnable game by any metric. So overall, Minnesota is going to play in a lot of winnable games next season. And I think all you got to do, if you start out hot, which I think they can, if Darius Taylor is healthy all year, Minnesota's going to hit the over. But on top of that, if you have Darius Taylor and Max Brosmer is clicking fast and early, I think Minnesota will start 3-0 on the season in that non-conference, and then that means you only have to win 2 Big Ten conference games all season. 2. And you've got other teams that aren't favored, like Illinois, like Rutgers, like blanking on other teams on the schedule right now. I guess I could just pull it up right here. Who else is on there? UCLA. I just told you, I think they're going to be the worst team in the Big Ten this upcoming season. Right there, that's 3 games that they can win. Maryland, I said I took the under. That's a 4th game. And then you always have a shot in your rivalry games, no matter if it's a down year, an up year, or what have you. So I think right there, it tells you should be smashing that 4.5 line, taking it to the bank, and that Minnesota is an underrated team in 2024. Now, people are too stuck at looking at the record of last year, seeing 5 wins and being like, oh, they shouldn't have even been in a bowl game. They did terrible. They lost to Northwestern. They lost to Purdue. They lost to Illinois. They lost to what have you. And that's all they're looking at. They're not looking at, they didn't think about, oh, 2 of those games were in the final minute or so. They didn't think about that the starting quarterback play just wasn't clicking with this team and we didn't have passing production. And the Gophers have went and tried to address those issues. So if you address them even in the slightest, that means you should be able to tick it up a little bit. The defense, that was the worst defense that we've had under Coach Joe Rossi in his time here. Even if it ticks up slightly, that is progress towards a better season. So overall, take it to the bank, be excited, and embrace the underdog, lock in, and get ready for 2024 because the Gophers are definitely going to keep on rowing. And it is a great time for you to cash in while you cheer for your Minnesota Gophers. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about on today's show is 3 reasons why Minnesota will win more than 4 games next year. Lock it in and have some confidence. We're going to talk about that coming up next. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at Gametime because what would you do with an extra $100? Now, for me, I'm going to use it. And like I said, I want to get a new Twins jersey. I want to get one of the new designs from last season and one of the new players in the last couple of years that have been getting time for the Twins. I would go between I would go through Carlos Correa or I would go with Royce Lewis. One of those two would be the go-to for me. If you have any thoughts on which one you would lock in, let me know in the comments. I'll keep it in consideration. But regardless, I think that with an extra $100 in your pocket, it gives you lots of options to think about. And Gametime is giving you just that opportunity. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events. And right now, all users get $100 off when you buy a big game ticket with code VEGAS100. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see your seat view before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices feature where you can show your total upfront so you know you're getting a great deal before you hit the checkout, and you can get your tickets in just a few seconds in 2 taps. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Right now, all Gametime users get $100 off big game tickets with code VEGAS100. That's VEGAS100 for $100 off the big game ticket. Again, VEGAS100. Terms apply. Just download Gametime and use that code. Or if you're not going to the game, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Gophers fans, I'm going to fly through this last segment because I want to talk about 3 reasons why Minnesota is going to win more than 4 games. I think overall this number has a lot of Gopher fans in a tizzy, but I think we all are on that similar page now. You've got the classic Debbie Downer, negative fans. Doesn't matter what sport it is. If it has Minnesota in the first part of that team name, then they're going to let you know that they're going to suck. They're going to stink. They're not going to be good. They should fire everybody, fire the coach, fire the rookies, fire the whoever. They're not good enough and they never will be. There's always those Minnesota fans. You can tune them out, but there is positivity for the season. Now, I'm not saying they're going to go win the Big Ten Conference, but what I am saying is I think this Minnesota team is going to be competitive, and 4 games is no problem. I think they'll get above that. I know they'll get above that, and there's 3 reasons why. The first one being Darius Taylor. Now, I've talked about him multiple times on the show. We've talked about the potential, the pace that he had from last season. But what I want to continue to stress is that this dude is an all-world talented running back. And we've seen that firsthand. He led the entire nation in rushing yards per game last year. And I think that was even not his best work. You take away that Nebraska game, it goes up 20 more yards per game. And I think that's just beginning to scratch the surface with a player who's younger to the position, with a guy who is ready and grinding and willing. And I think he is going to put in that extra work this offseason to get himself to the top of the mountaintop. But on top of that, you got to talk about that year 2 leap and being able for the game to slow down a bit for you and have some more success and see things a little bit clearer and a little bit quicker and be a little bit stronger and knowing how to prep for the season. You add all of that together and you talk about the success that Minnesota has running the ball, even if they can have a tiny bit of progress towards the passing game and get to a 2,000-yard passing season. I think Darius Taylor can do the rest on the ground. Now, if you can do a healthy amount better in the passing game, get to 2,500 yards passing, keep it kind of the vertical game a threat, and be able to open up the play action pass for some bigger shots with Daniel Jackson, with Lemeki Brockington, and others. If you can get that going, then yes, this team is going to thrive, and it's going to open up the run game for Darius Taylor even more. Darius Taylor is an easy reason why this team will win more than 4 games next season. I would be willing to bet my bottom dollar. Now, number 2 reason why this team will win more than 4 games next year is defensive progress. Now, the 2019 season, the 2020 season, the 21 season, 22 season, there were all moments of brilliance for coaching with Joe Rossi on the defensive side of ball. He made great adjustments to his personnel, and he had the Gophers playing really efficiently, especially on third downs. They were one of the best defenses in the entire nation in 2022 when it came to third down defense. Now, all of that kind of went to crap in 2023 because of injuries, because of younger players being forced to play in maybe not their most ideal positions, because people were still getting warmed up to it, because there were adjustments on the fly and you weren't able to play the exact thing that you had spent all fall camp trying to prep. And all of a sudden you lose the main player, Cody Lindenberg, one of the top 3 players on the defense, who is a focal point for the defense. You lose him right away and you don't get to play him. And then you got to throw in a redshirt freshman who hasn't really had any playing experience. And you continue to have moments like that where younger guys are going to have to play moments that they maybe aren't ready for and they're playing above their head. That's hopefully something that isn't happening with the Gophers next year, with a new defensive coordinator in, with more depth, more experience, with those younger players being forced into tough positions last year. You talk about a fresh voice, a fresh outlook, and maybe some more risks, some more aggressiveness, some more blitzes, some more trying to create turnovers. I think that is only going to be healthy for the Gophers next season, and it's going to help in this Big Ten that needs to have efficient defense, high-level defense to have success. I think Minnesota's going to get back towards a really good defense. I think that overall they have some promise there, and they have the talent, young talent and older experienced talent, that'll be ready to step up for the Gophers in the season. So I think that fresh perspective will go hand in hand with defensive progress, giving the Gophers more than 4 wins this season. And finally, the last reason number 3, why I believe the Gophers will win more than 4 games is massive change across the entire conference. You're talking about quarterback changes left, right, and then some. You're talking about almost every school that Minnesota plays next year has a different quarterback at the helm. Going quickly through the schedule, Iowa doesn't have a different quarterback, but their quarterback was hurt most of the year last year, so kind of has a new quarterback. Michigan will have a new quarterback. USC has a new quarterback. Ethan Garber will be the USCLA starter, but he wasn't even the full-time starter last year. Maryland will have a new starter. Rutgers might have a new starter. Wisconsin's going to have a new starter. North Carolina's going to have a new starter. Basically, Penn State, Illinois, and maybe, if you want to count Iowa or UCLA, who had partial starters last year, those 4 games are the only games that really don't have a new starter. And that's just at the quarterback. There's still tons of transfer movement. There are tons of coaching changes, massive change across the whole conference. But for Minnesota, the change isn't too drastic. Now, yes, people might bring up Joe Rossi, but I think they addressed that in a relatively smart way. It's not a completely new defense that they have to learn from the ground up and adjust and everything like that. It's similar principles, similar concepts, but a different voice, a different perspective, and different wrinkles to help create more aggressiveness, more blitzing, and more hopefully troubles for opposing offenses. So it's not reworking the wheel, which means that you don't have a ton of change at the coaching staff level that's impactful, but also, like I said, 19th in the entire FBS in returning production, which means you have a lot of what other people don't have: returning outlooks, returning perspectives, and hopefully being able to build on the successes of last year, the things that went right, and getting rid of the negativities. I think if they do that, they're easily above 4 wins next year. And that's going to do it for us on today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you are looking forward to many more rankings to come this offseason. So be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of those moving forward. I will see you tomorrow, where we're going to talk a little bit about what happened with Iowa against the Minnesota girls basketball team. And then on top of that, with Illinois and Minnesota Gophers men's basketball team, we're going to talk about what happened with those squads tomorrow, coming up on Locked On Golden Gophers. I'll see you then. Row the boat, Sky Umago Gophers. And as always, don't forget to subscribe.